So quantum has really burst onto the scene this year, I think, in the UK because of the publication of the National Quantum Strategy and the associated 2.5 billion over the next 10 years to push that forward. However, people might not always necessarily recognise that the UK has had a really strong quantum base since around 2014 with the start of the National Quantum Technologies Programme, which has really enabled a quantum industry here in the UK to really flourish and also start the early works of getting businesses, our industries in financial services or life sciences ready to capitalise on the opportunity of quantum. However, even though the UK is in a strong place and we have got this national quantum strategy, there is still a long road towards commercialisation, and we certainly cannot be complacent. There are a number of really big questions that we still need to be asking ourselves and how we can best support our businesses. Thankfully, I'm not here to answer those questions myself. In fact, I'm here to ask the questions. And I am joined on stage here today by Richard Parasam, who is the Head of Delivery at the Office for Quantum within Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, so DSIT, that was created earlier on this year. With Monty Barlow, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Cambridge Consultants, and also Kate Marshall, who is the Global Technical Ambassador for IBM. Thank you all for joining me here today. So I think on any panel on quantum, we always need to get started by asking the question, can you explain quantum in layman's terms? And I am going to pick on Kate to answer that.
That is absolutely fine, but no small feat, so bear with me. So to keep this as concise as possible, as we are going to be talking about a number of different quantum technologies and the sort of associated questions with those, I will start with quantum computing and just a 60-second summary on that. So if you haven't heard of quantum computing before, it essentially represents a fundamentally different type of information processing, whereby we can take advantage of the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics, such as superposition and entanglement, that you may have heard of before. I'm not going to bore you with what those terms mean, at least for the time being. But what we actually use these concepts for is to create environments in which we can we can create environments where those concepts are observable when we're able to create spaces that are either microscopically small and or extremely cold. And the reason we'd want to do that is to create something that physicists would call a Hilbert space, what we can think of as a problem space. It's infinitely more complicated than any sort of problem space we can create with any classically equivalent technology. And the reason we want to do that is so that we can start to address problems that are considered today to be classically intractable or impossible to solve within any reasonable amount of time with even the world's most powerful classical supercomputers. And to sort of look at the flip side of that, we're not looking to address every type of classically hard problem with quantum computing. In fact, we're trying to address a very small subset of what we'd call NP hard problems. And those problems fall in the categories of simulation, machine learning and optimization problems. And within those areas, we're looking to use quantum computing to address some of the most complicated problems facing society today. So things like, for example, really large-scale network optimization of nationwide energy network grids. So we look at the sort of energy crisis that's facing the continent right now. These are the scale of problems we're looking at. Now, of course, this panel is addressing much more than just quantum computing. And I'm not going to go into a sort of lengthy explanation of what the other technologies are, but there are other technologies that are included in the repertoire of quantum technologies, and these include things like sensing and communication as well. And one thing that I can summarize for all three is that we are using these quantum mechanical concepts, such as superposition and entanglement, to basically try and see if we can reach some sort of advantage using these quantum technologies over and above what we can achieve with the classical technologies alone. So that's a very quick intro, and hopefully that will set the scene for the rest of the questions.
You know, I've sat on so many panels with Kate discussing quantum over, I guess, the last few years, and I've never met anyone who does a better job at explaining what quantum is so succinctly, so thank you, Kate. But Richard, over to you. Why do you think UK government chose quantum as one of its 5 key strategic technologies, really having that emphasis on the bright future that quantum can bring to the UK?
So thank you very much. Hello, everybody. So earlier this year, we refreshed our integrated review, which is a cross-governmental review of defence and security in particular. It looks at like the resilience of the nation and to the future of what are the things that we need to be doing in the country, where do we need to be looking for policy leadership, and within that, what are the critical technologies that are going to be essential in the future. Within this, we've picked 5 critical technologies on the basis of, there were a range of criteria. There were 9 criteria that were used to determine which the critical tech should be. These were things like impact on a sustainable environment. Are they fundamental to other other technologies? But then also impact on security and defense, and potential commercial impacts and the market impact of these technologies. And quantum was really important absolutely across the board, and was immediately considered as one of those top priority technologies. And what that has meant is a couple of things. One, when the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology was formed earlier this year, we've really had supercharged political attention and focus as one of these 5: quantum, AI, semiconducting, future telecoms, and engineering biology. They're the others. So we've got really good political attention. That was also supercharged by the strategy being launched, with the Chancellor committing £2.5 billion over the next 10 years. And it also means that there is an underlying framework for these 5 critical technologies to make sure that we're not working in isolation. And so these are things like we, the government, we work regularly to review what are the levers that we have in place to further boost and supercharge, particularly these technologies, using things like a coordinated talent and skills policy, or procurement across different departments. And so we have a science and tech framework that we then work with all of the other critical technologies to make sure that we are making the best of these brilliant technologies.
Perfect. And we'll come back on some of the key points you mentioned there around skills and procurement, and that joined up look across government. However, Monty, so both Kate and Richard, in their answers to 2 different questions that did focus on the value of quantum technologies can bring, you now have the difficult task of kind of bringing those 2 answers together. And I'm going to ask you, what, from your perspective, do you think the National Quantum Strategy got right for businesses and how they get ready for quantum?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'm sure Rich as well can talk to the government's approach to that. But from a kind of industry perspective, it is a significant commitment. It's a significant investment over a long period, and that's important because this isn't something that's happening overnight or as seemingly quickly as Gen AI has burst into the public forum we heard earlier. This is quite a long-term play. So this will mean stability for businesses. It will mean we can foster better ecosystems. And I think that's very exciting. That's the right thing. There's devil in the detail. There's no doubt about it. There's a question of focus. The UK probably can't be, well, it doesn't want to be jack of all trades in everything quantum. So this question of where do you focus? How do we place the bets? Are we listening too much to those already started? What might we be missing out? Those are all really good questions. But it is this kind of investment at this kind of level that's going to be needed, I think, to propel the UK forward.
I really like the fact that you mentioned is it the role of the UK to be jack of all quantum, because in the when we were chatting beforehand, that was definitely something that we had there was a bit of debate there. Yep. And so at this stage, do you think the UK needs to develop its niche, or do we kind of go out and try and be a jack of all quantum?
The coward's answer always is you do a little bit of both. You don't narrow your sights early. This is early on in a revolution. There's no doubt about it. So you can liken it to all of the others that people, classically do from steam onwards. So nobody knows how this plays out. Nobody knows those who are going to be rich and famous downstream, what jobs, other things are going to be significantly changed by quantum. But it is now a case of kind of when, not if you like. So I think we should be building towards niches, and we have a sense perhaps of some of what those are already. And, at the same time, we keep an open eye, because some of those disruptions coming are probably barely visible, barely understood right now.
Monty, what do you think those sort of emergent niches are?
That's a really good question. And we could look at, I think, what's the UK got as well, because this is partly this is competition with the rest of the world, if you like, at times, as well as collaboration, as well as accepting that the UK will never do one thing all by itself. Mm-hmm. And we could talk lots about complicated infrastructure, supply chains, other things needed to make quantum kind of work, if you like. There's a definite speciality around compute, if you like, in the UK. There's a long history backwards in invention and compute. It's a very, very rich one, if you like. But I think also from some of the areas I have teams working in and so on, some of those like sensing also have quite a lot of opportunity, perhaps more quickly, to actually yield a return, if you like, for UK business, for the UK government. It might actually start saving lives more quickly in some of those domains than perhaps compute, which is the big juggernaut that we always talk about. If I had definite answers, I would be a wealthy man.
But even within compute, right, Kate, we've kind of had this conversation around where is the UK's niche going to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think definitely echoing a lot of the points that Monty said there around, we're very early in the sort of the revolution that's coming, but there's a huge opportunity right now to identify where we can fill the gaps and become market leaders, especially in areas where the UK is already positioned so strongly to succeed in those areas. So I sort of, in my head, when I'm thinking about this, I definitely categorize it in probably 3 key areas when I'm just thinking about the compute aspect. So definitely when it comes to hardware, I wouldn't try to sort of summarize the sort of different startups and smaller organizations that are working on that, but we do have world-leading organizations that I was chatting to Oxford Instruments yesterday, and they are so prolific in where they are presenting themselves in the global quantum compute industry. There was a publication about the first Oxford Instruments machine actually being co-located in one of the data centers in Asia. That is a huge feat, and definitely hardware is somewhere that the UK is extremely strong, and that sort of supply chain question that comes into feeding the global quantum hardware ecosystem, you could say, is something that the UK should be thinking about where its strengths are in sort of depending on which sort of part of the supply chain you're looking at, but we already have such strengths in those areas. Even when you're just looking at the fridge technology, the Oxford Instruments is sort of really, really playing a strong role there. Sort of jumping away from hardware in the software space, that is somewhere that the UK is extremely strong at already. We have software groups and software sort of startups all over the UK, just to name a few, like Riverlane, based in Cambridge, is extremely strong and globally renowned in the space. We have research in the area as well. There's a really, really progressive group working in Edinburgh on sort of quantum software the software products and supporting software for that hardware. So again, software is somewhere that I'd really like to see everything being done as far as possible to support the UK's prolific sort of eminence in that space. And then finally, when it comes to applications, sort of what you mentioned there, Monty, where could we maximise on the industry strengths that we already play to? The UK is particularly strong when it comes to financial services and pharmaceutical research. So I'd love to see more support going towards industry on supporting those industries, finding applications and use cases of quantum computing. So that's probably how I organise it in my brain. But then again, like we said, this isn't just a panel to talk about quantum compute. The UK also has great strengths in photonics, and that has applications in sensing and other technologies as well. So I think it's all about sort of looking at the places where we already have strengths and trying to maximise on those whilst this economy is already forming, and we can take advantage of that opportunity.
Let's definitely come back and talk about how we build quantum into some of those industries and sectors where the UK has natural strengths. But Richard, I think you wanted to come in before.
Just very briefly, just to pick up on something Monty mentioned about sensing being a potential early opportunity to show results and give impact. And then Kate was talking about Oxford Instruments. And so I just wanted to make the point that we are already commercialising within this country. And it's great to see it's something that the government is like actively looking to support. And it's not just, Oxford Instruments and superconducting side. I think Richard Murray is somewhere in the back there. Orca have already, they're selling their machines as well. There's consulting opportunities already. How do you prepare? What sorts of problems are going to be, solvable with quantum compute? So you need to be ready. You also need to protect yourself within the current current understanding of like what quantum is going to be able to do. So it's just sort of make the point that we are already commercializing in this country. We've done well raising. Well, the industry has done pretty well. They're second in the world to the US in terms of VC funding that has been raised. So that's really encouraging to see. And that's being raised, at least in certain points, on the back of revenue that's already been shown.
Yeah, and in the UK, we also, I think it might be a little bit out of date now, but the NQCC did do research and showed that we are second for quantum commercialization worldwide as well, which is really important. But Richard, you have the difficult task within the Office for Quantum of identifying kind of the commercialization opportunities, the problems we want to solve with quantum, and then figuring out how we go about doing that as UK government. Are you able to share maybe a little bit of insight in kind of the approach you're taking there? I'm thinking maybe around the missions that are mentioned in the National Quantum Strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we in government we do not have all of the answers to questions as complicated as that. We see our role as to foster, develop an ecosystem, more as so just to foster the environment for the creativity to thrive. And in my blog, I mentioned the importance of all together now that we need the public sector and the private sector working intelligently together. And so we have a role to prime the pump, to procure intelligently, to send signals as we have with the strategy and the government's associated funding. So in terms of that's like one strand of our overall approach. It's to foster out like your brilliance. And then with this in mind, we have missions. So these are long-term objectives that are stretching but not impossible over the next about 10 years. There's still some discussion that are going on, and these aren't sort of things that government are sitting in a closed room developing. We have been going out to industry, academia, bodies like techUK to create about 3 to 5, maybe a little bit more, big, bold missions in specific areas like compute. What is compute going to be able to do related to classical compute in 10 years' time? And we're looking at what is plausible, but what is stretching, and we are going to set an ambition as a government. Similarly for sensing and communications networks, and they are coming. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about when, but very soon, in very active discussions with ministers about pushing those out there to set the scene for all of you guys out in the ecosystem to work together to ensure that we retain our really leading position here.
Fantastic, thank you. And let's keeping on the theme of missions then, but let's actually look at what application looks like, because there might be people sat in this room right now who goes, oh, quantum sounds really interesting, but I don't know what that means for me or my business. So what do you think some of the most promising applications of quantum might be? And Monty, I might go to you on that one.
Okay, sure. I'm sure we'll have our views here as well. You can look at it in the same way Kate was saying, you can compartmentalise this. You can kind of look at what might come sooner, what might come later. That's always quite interesting. For compute, there's a whole set of applications around broadly chemistry simulation, material science, things where we could solve it today, but we'd need to turn the whole universe into Pentiums or something to have any chance of ever finishing a computation. So we know what we want to do. We just, understanding why there are heavy elements work so well in drugs. People just don't know this kind of thing right now. So a whole set of early compute problems that probably don't need perfect quantum computers, can live with a bit of uncertainty, a bit of error, a bit of, but they're essential, really useful applications, which then, I don't think it's overstating it, those can have sustainability implications, if you like. In some cases, it could be battery technologies we're improving and other such things. So that's one category, probably at the earlier end of quantum computing, needing the software revolution and so on that goes with it. My business is working a lot in communications and security. We've spoken probably least about that now. It's an area of quite a lot of hype and complexity and myth, if you like. But we are reaching a point where we both need to protect against problems that quantum is going to bring in forms of weakening systems that exist, but also there's huge opportunities to build new networks, new ways of communicating. The soundbite there is from a technology point of view, it's uniquely able to tell you whether somebody's eavesdropped on your message. There is no other way of doing that, and it can do that. And that's got to look pretty cool at the time of difficult geopolitical tensions and more.
And again, just on communication, we do actually have commercial test beds happening in the UK around that as well. So these things aren't happening massively in the future. They're starting to be explored now. And
they're real, and perhaps they're slightly less glamorous than the supercomputer in a room somewhere answering the meaning of life and so on, but critically important as well.
And Kate, what is the use case that you get most excited about?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. So I would like to start by saying I've never spoken to anyone in a specific industry, and we've concluded the conversation to say there's no applications for quantum computing relevant to that industry. And actually, the direction that the conversations tend to go in are more when I'm discussing past, for example, case studies of IBM Quantum's work with clients. Usually it will be more often than not, people are finding unexpected symmetries or synergies between one industry use case that then becomes relevant to their own. So, for example, a lot of the early movers in terms of quantum application research, quantum compute application research, involve players in the financial services industries. I work most closely with energies and utilities clients, and some of the most interesting conversations are actually looking at reapplying a lot of the lessons learned from financial services research on portfolio optimization, derivative pricing or risk analysis, and reapplying that research to the energy industry, for example, to look at sort of efficient spot price on the day or day ahead energy markets for trading energy units across market borders or continental borders even, looking at sort of risk analysis of how you can forward plan for the state of the energy market in the coming weeks. So things like that. So I probably have a bit of a bias in the sense that I do work most closely with energy companies. So that tends to be where my interest is. But I also find it incredibly exciting that in the last 12 months, we've deployed the first system sort of on site at the Cleveland Clinic, and that's dedicated for research on healthcare and life sciences. That will be a machine sort of dedicated to looking at the application of new medicines and running sort of quantum machine learning applications to help classify or predict the cases of medical, individual sort of medical patient cases coming in to our hospitals. So I think there's huge numbers of exciting areas, and I think the key thing that I find most interesting is that application or research done in one industry can often be found to be extremely useful to multiple other industries as well. And yeah, I think that's probably the key thing for me.
Fantastic.
Can I?
Yeah.
I'm jumping at my seat. So I was at the showcase, the National Quantum Showcase last week, which shows off the best of British, and I know lots of you were there. And I had on my head the quantum head scanner. This is Circa's head scanner, which is will eventually become a replacement for. Well, not a replacement. That's not government policy, but it replicates some of the features of an MRI for your brain. But instead of having to go and sit in the tube, and which is quite claustrophobic, this is just like a hat. It's a lightweight hat. It looks a bit bizarre. There is a photograph of me on the internet somewhere with one on, and it's lighter. It's more sensitive. It's more power efficient. It's less scary, particularly for kids, but also for others. And it's just it's a real physical, tangible example of what quantum tech is going to look like eventually. There are others, that I was seeing at this showcase, like methane detecting, which has a huge implication for climate change, for example, which we can do much more sensitively with quantum. That was developed in partnership with the quantum program, the National Quantum Program. Tons of others. International communications networks by entangled photons. It's absolutely wild what we're going to be able to do.
It's hard not to get excited when you've got all that in, but what, I guess mostly to Kate and Monty on this, what advice do you give to your clients who are thinking they want to start experimenting with these technologies because they're seeing amazing stuff like Rich has just mentioned, but they just don't know where to start?
Do you want to go first?
I'd go first. I think answering the negative initially, one, beware of kind of simple proofs of concept. In fact, beware of trying to answer in a too black and white manner, is it helpful, is it for me or whatever, and particularly beware of trying to work out, is it a threat to you? Because I liken that to standing in front of a big truck coming towards you going, has it hit me yet? No. Has it hit me yet? No. It's kind of late when it does. So look at the positive, look at the upside. If you like, look at how you could get on that truck. You need a strategy though. So it's not a case of just go have a look at it, tick yes or no, Gen AI, do I have to worry about it? Yes or no. That's never the approach to these things. So have a strategy, accept it as a relatively long play, and I'll hand over to you, Kate, to
No, for sure. That's really, really important points there, though. I think for me, definitely there's a very strong point about looking at your workforce and understanding whether that you already have the skills or how large the delta is between where you are just now, and understanding who would be the people in the best position to actually pick up the skills to learn how to write quantum programs, but also how to think about industry applications and things. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that you need sort of a quantum physics PhD in order to understand or work in this industry. That's absolutely untrue. One of the key problems that we have right now is that we have a technology and we're trying to look for applications. And in order to do that, to solve that problem, which is arguably in the wrong direction, usually we have a problem and we try to look for the technologies to solve that problem. Currently, we're kind of doing that task in reverse. And in order to succeed at that task, which is not easy, you need people with industry backgrounds to help identify what the most difficult problems are in those industry applications, and trying to identify which of those in particular might be most relevant to addressing using some combination of quantum and classical compute. And that's no easy feat. So I think probably the first thing would be to look at the organization from a bird's eye view and trying to understand where is probably the most sensible place to look at building skills to start learning about quantum computing and the usefulness of quantum computing. And the second thing is just always sort of use what's available to get hands-on. Obviously, working in sort of a sector where lots of these companies do have free testbed or equivalent sort of services, like IBM Quantum has more than 25 machines available online. That is extremely important for the learning community to actually start understanding what can be done today, and understanding how to use these machines. And I think you can never underestimate the importance of that. And these private companies like IBM will have a corporate responsibility to make sure there continues to exist free availability of these machines to a certain extent so that people can learn. Otherwise, you won't build the workforce that's needed to support the industry of the future. Furthermore, in the UK, we're extremely blessed to have a number of emerging sort of testbed capabilities that are slightly more advanced. So rather than just sort of trying on your own to start building applications using either a programming language or user interfaces that are more interactive online, we also have a number of different organisations in the UK, such as Digital Catapult is just one example of an organisation that's looking at opening testbed capabilities to help organisations start to try their hand at quantum computing. The NQCC is another obvious actor that does have sort of a really, really open invitation for organisations to apply and ask for support on trying to identify applications and actually get hands-on. And just a small plug there, we actually partnered with NQCC and we're able to announce that earlier this week that now the NQCC is one pathway that you can get access to the more elite IBM quantum machines that are the largest in the world and some of the most powerful in the world, and that is extremely important for the UK economy to have access through some central body and be able to start actually pushing the edge of research and development when it comes to cutting edge quantum computing applications.
Amazing.
I'd just add, I like the have your eye on the value at the end rather than the tech push, and accept that value will drop out along the way as well. And that's already happening. There's even, in a study of quantum algorithms, people have said, well, it's going to be a little while till the perfect computer's available. And then there's been a realization we can do more today than we ever thought we possibly could. If you don't start on that journey, if you don't skill up, or you just think it's quantum physicists is all you need to buy a few of them in the future. That's it. Somehow it magically comes good. Yeah. The value in going on that journey is significant for businesses.
Yes. I don't want to hog all the time, so I do just want to quickly ask, are there any questions from the audience? Yeah?
In fact, probably had some questions for the previous panel as well, but probably I didn't got some time here. So,
it's just the microphone, sorry.
Hi, my name is Amitabh. So I have a startup which actually we try to focus on quantum computing, but I think we got into the same gray area which we've been discussing, right? So, and I think what you beautifully described that, usually we have problems and then we have a technology that solves. Here we have a technology and we're still trying to find use cases. So how long do you think, this gray is going to continue, or is this something which is there a focus forum or association which probably would be actively looking after trying to find out these use cases, bringing all of this technology into business rather than just research, which is the case currently?
It's a good question, how we achieve that matchmaking, I guess. So, yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, was the question how long the grey period will last for?
Yeah, I mean, is there any action which has been taken, whether are there any organizations or associations which would be pursuing, with the focus on identifying the right use cases for the technology which kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that's happening right now in the sense that there's multiple companies. I mean, I just represent one of those key companies that are looking at applications of quantum computing. And in fact, the IBM Quantum Network is probably one of the largest in the world. We have more than 180 Fortune 500 companies, research organizations, startups that we're working with alongside. So it's a really big family of people that are looking at applications and trying to push the boundary of what's possible today so that we can look at the future of what quantum computing might look like. I mean, in my head, when I visualize what the pathway to maybe the future or mature quantum computing is, I divide it into 3 different eras, and I would look at sort of the era that we're in right now is the noisy intermediate scale quantum era, it's commonly called. Some people have other definitions of that era, but that's the immature sort of noisy quantum era that we're sitting in currently. And we're pushing at the edge of that into an era of quantum advantage right now even, because people are sort of starting to demonstrate sort of indications of where quantum advantage might sit, and that's that sort of demonstration of a significant practical benefit over and above anything that we can do with classical compute alone today. But then furthermore after that is sort of this error-corrected era of quantum computing, or a really mature era of quantum computing where we can see generally useful applications across a number of different sort of industries and things. And I think probably when you're referring to the grey area, I probably associate that most closely with where we are now and the edge of that quantum advantage, so the era in the middle that I'm thinking of. And people often think that that's sort of 5 to 10 years away, and people have been saying that for 5 to 10 years as well. So it's very confusing for the general public to understand, when am I going to see return on investment, or when am I going to see usefulness being returned to me? And there's no key answer to that, which is why it's so difficult to come up with a straight answer. But I think the key point is that it's so much closer, and the rate that we're moving at today is so much faster than anyone could have anticipated maybe 5 years ago. And so it's so key for businesses to start thinking about readiness and to start thinking about those points I mentioned before about workforce, so that as and when we're at that era of quantum advantage, I really liked the simile you had earlier of standing in front of a truck and when it's here, it's too late. I'd never thought about it like that. But yes, that's exactly what we're trying to advocate, this client network and all of the actors that will be able to use this technology to think about today. Because in my opinion, it is in the next few years, and it's not sort of in the 15-year horizon. It's much closer than that.
Do you want to come in?
I'll just add, so government has a role to play as well in, while this grey zone exists, to try and actively work with the industry to figure out what can we do now, what do we anticipate. And so we're doing that in a couple of ways. The first is a catalyst fund, which we launched earlier this year, where we team up government departments with the industry and academia and projects. And the government departments, DEFRA might say, how can we use we would like to be able to use quantum to capture methane emissions, for example. Or the Department for Transport might say, we've got these unbelievably complex transport optimization problems that quantum compute is going to be able to support in the future. And so what we've launched is a series of, I think it's about 30 small projects to identify use cases, marry them up with potential solutions, look at what that time frame is going to be, and then start a relationship that eventually, ideally, will lead to some form of procurement signal. So that's one approach to that grey area. And then secondly, just the missions that I mentioned before. We collectively with the ecosystem are doing our best to put robust and ambitious timescales on some of these big, bold ambitions that we're going to come out with.
Fantastic. I could sit and talk about quantum for hours personally, but we are at time and needing to move on. So I want to just give you all the opportunity to just say, what is the final message you'd like to leave the audience with? I started this way, so I'm going to go this way. So Richard, to you.
So we all have a role to play in the quantum revolution, as Monty put it. It's not only quantum physicists, but there are a range of technologies here. We're going to need a range of skills, and we are going to need marketeers and trade bodies and academics, as well as everything in between. So we all have a role to play, and that's why it's great that we are all here talking about it.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us here today. Monty?
I think if we're honest in the UK, we know we're great at inventing things. We know our track record of pull through to value is maybe not what some other communities around the world, particularly the Valley and so on, perhaps have achieved. So I think it's critical within the UK that we have conversations around deep tech. Quantum's a very good example of that, of what the end value is, how this actually pays back for business, what we need to do. It's a conversation between academia, between government, between industry the whole time. It's not simple, but we have to have to get good at doing that. It's dear to my heart. Cambridge Consultants was founded upon the idea of linking academic and industry thinking together, and in this case, it's a much wider conversation involving government as well. I'd just like to give a quick plug to, if on the Cambridge Consultants website, you can download a report about deep tech thinking, including quantum and why deep tech strategy is so important for businesses, if you would like. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And Kate?
Yeah, I think only other thing I would add, both like really important points, and I definitely love the one around making sure that people do see that it's not just quantum physicists that's going to make up the workforce for this industry. That's probably the one that I'm personally most passionate about. I think the other thing is just getting hands-on has never been so easy. The last 12 months in the UK has been so important, and sort of the progress we've made is really amazing for the availability of either services or programs available to support businesses in the UK to getting hands-on, but also if you as an individual are interested, there is a wealth of resources online, and IBM Quantum and Qiskit is just one of those resources. So really I encourage everyone to really get hands-on, because like we mentioned in answer to your question, this era of quantum advantage and the next stages are so much closer than people ever would have anticipated, and we're moving very quickly towards a period where people will need to understand how to use this technology, so the time is now to get started.
Fantastic. So I would love to thank my speakers for joining me on stage here today. There's such a wealth of knowledge here, working across all different aspects of the UK quantum industry. So thank you so much. I think my takeaway point is that this conversation is just the start of it. So if you've heard anything here today from either of our speakers, I'm sure they'd be happy. I'm kind of throwing you under the bus here. I'm sure you'd be happy to talk further with them and encourage everyone here to start experimenting where possible with quantum technologies. We're not done on quantum yet. So the next session that we're going to be exploring is actually the process of selling a commercially viable quantum computer. And I'm going to be delighted to welcome Richard Murray, who is the CEO of Orca, to stage. But please join me in saying thank you to our panelists.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.